What if the person who raised you, the person who taught you what family means, suddenly looked you in the eye and said, "You are no longer my son"? Not because of betrayal, not because of a crime, but because of the woman you chose to love. Tonight on Emotional Morning, we share a story beyond reality television. A story not told in confessionals, not shown in flashy TLC edits, and never fully explained to fans. This is the untold story of 90 Day Fiancé, stars Dufren and Yara. They didn't just leave a TV show. They left a country, a family, and an entire life. To the public, Joy and Yara seemed like the fun couple. A party-loving husband, a glamorous and outspoken wife, who always survived drama with laughter. But behind closed doors, something darker was happening. Family disputes became whispered accusations. Whispers turned into hostility, and hostility turned into an ultimatum that shattered a family forever. A mother accused her daughter-in-law of violence, and a son was forced to choose between blood and love. A marriage was tested not by distance, but by loyalty. When the cameras stopped rolling, when contracts expired, and when the noise faded, Joy and Yara made a shocking decision. They sold everything, home, property, and their American dream, for $2.2 million. And then they disappeared. No farewell episode, no dramatic TLC special, no goodbye to fans, just silence. Tonight, we break that silence. This is not gossip or rumor, but a carefully pieced together story of family pressure, emotional warfare, and the cost of choosing love over blood. Before the fights, accusations, and family war, there was love. Joy Dufren started as the carefree American bachelor, working offshore, earning good money, and living fast and loud with one foot always on a plane. Then came Yara from Ukraine, confident, stylish, and fiercely independent. She didn't fit the mold of a submissive fiancé. She challenged Joy, questioned him, and most importantly, she didn't bend to anyone. Their love unfolded across continents, language barriers, and cultural clashes. To viewers it looked chaotic, but beneath the chaos was something real. They fought but stayed together. They argued but chose each other. Even distance didn't break them. Marriage didn't magically fix problems, but it strengthened their commitment. When Yara became pregnant, everything changed. Joy became a father, and Yara became a mother protecting her child. But while their relationship grew, Joy's family dynamic quietly unraveled. Yara sensed resistance, polite smiles, passive comments, judging looks. What Joy saw as normal family tension, Yara felt as rejection. She was different. She spoke her mind and set boundaries, which for some felt like disrespect. The cameras captured surface-level drama, but the deeper conflict was already set. When love challenges tradition, when a woman refuses to stay silent, and when a son stops obeying without question, families don't always adapt. Sometimes they explode. Joy and Yara's conflict seemed familiar to viewers. Arguments about partying, work schedules, and responsibilities. But what the cameras didn't capture was far more damaging. The tension wasn't only in the marriage, it came from the outside. Yara noticed it first. Phone calls ending abruptly when she entered the room, conversations shifting tone when family was mentioned, subtle pressure on Joy disguised as advice. At first, she brushed it off. She believed love would earn acceptance, but acceptance never came. Family visits became exhausting. Moments that should have been bonding became silent evaluations. Every choice Yara made, from parenting to lifestyle, was judged. Joy was caught between loyalty to his wife and his family. He tried to calm both sides, explain intentions, and reassure everyone, but unresolved tension doesn't disappear. It mutates. Yara began feeling isolated as a wife and mother. No matter what she did, she was seen as the outsider, the foreign woman, the one who changed Joy. To Joy's family, he wasn't just growing up, he was slipping away. Pressure took a toll on the marriage. Arguments became heavier, deeper, no longer just loud. Conversations that ended in laughter turned to silence. Joy started withdrawing, emotionally exhausted from mediating. The cameras captured drama, but the real story was unfolding quietly. A family fracture in slow motion. A marriage tested not by distance, but by interference. And a storm was gathering, waiting for one moment to break. Suspicion replaced trust. Resentment replaced understanding. All it took was one accusation to ignite everything. Some conflicts are loud. Others are quiet but more dangerous. From the start, Yara sensed that Joy's mother had made up her mind about her. It wasn't said directly. It didn't need to be. Disapproval lived in pauses, looks, and carefully chosen words. To the outside world, Joy's mother seemed protective, concerned about his happiness and future. To Yara, it felt like control. Every decision she made was criticized. Her confidence was seen as disrespect. Her silence was seen as guilt. There was no winning. Joy wasn't just growing up, he was being pulled away. Narratives were built behind Yara's back. Opinions formed without her voice. Joy defended her, reminded his mother that marriage meant choosing your partner, but his words fell on deaf ears. To his mother, this wasn't about marriage, it was about loss. And when people feel replaced, they often respond with hostility disguised as righteousness. Yara limited contact, not out of spite, but for self-preservation. She focused on her child, her home, and her peace. But that distance only fueled suspicion. She's changing you. She's turning you against us. She doesn't respect this family. By the time Joy left for work, trusting distance would cool tensions. Something inside his family had already shifted. Resentment had matured, judgment had solidified, and patience had run out. What followed wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an accusation so explosive it would permanently destroy the bridge between mother and son. After that day, nothing was ever the same. Joy's mother claimed that during Joy's absence, Yara had behaved aggressively. She said Yara was disrespectful, hostile, and crossed a line that could never be undone. In her version, the argument escalated beyond words, and she claimed she had been physically assaulted. The accusation spread quickly, but only to Joy, not to authorities or neutral mediators. When Joy finally returned her call, he was blindsided. His mother's voice wasn't shaken, it was resolute. She spoke with certainty, conviction, and pain. She described Yara not as a misunderstood daughter-in-law, but as a threat, someone unstable and dangerous. Yara, on the other hand, was stunned. She denied everything. She said the confrontation never became physical. Words were exchanged. Yes, but accusations of violence were false. In her eyes, the story had been exaggerated, reshaped, and weaponized. Two women, two versions, one son caught in the middle. Joy didn't know who to believe. What made it unbearable wasn't just the accusation. It was the refusal to communicate. There was no sit down, no mediation, no attempt at resolution. Lines were drawn instantly. Family members began taking sides. Conversations hardened. Yara felt watched, judged, and condemned without trial. Joy felt something worse than anger. He felt betrayal. The accusation wasn't just against his wife. It was against his judgment, his choice, his life. In his mind, the situation spiraled out of control too quickly. There were no police reports, no witnesses, only words, but words powerful enough to tear a family apart. By the time Joy tried to de-escalate, it was too late. The accusation had taken on a life of its own, and it would soon lead to words so cruel and final that nothing could reverse them. Joy had faced pressure before, offshore work, long separations, public scrutiny, but nothing prepared him for this. For the first time, there was no safe middle ground. On one side was his wife, the woman who crossed oceans to build a life with him, who carried his child, who stood beside him when the cameras stopped rolling. On the other side was his mother, the woman who raised him, protected him, and believed without hesitation that she was right. Both demanded loyalty, and loyalty meant choosing one and losing the other. Joy tried to slow everything down. He asked questions. He searched for inconsistencies. He wanted time to understand what really happened, to talk to both sides face to face. But time was no longer available. His mother didn't want explanations. She wanted action. To her, doubting the accusation was betrayal. Supporting Yara, even temporarily, was rejection. Every attempt Joy made to calm things only deepened the divide. "You've changed," she told him. "You're not the son I raised." Those words cut deeper than anger could. Meanwhile, Yara was unraveling under the weight of it all. She felt condemned without evidence, silenced without defense. Every day was an emotional battle, not just to protect her marriage, but to protect her dignity. She asked Joy for one thing: believe me, not blindly, but as her husband. Joy stood frozen between two realities. In one, his mother was a victim who needed protection. In the other, his wife was being punished for a lie she said never happened. No matter what he chose, someone would be hurt. The stress followed him everywhere. Sleep became restless. Conversations turned hollow. Even moments of quiet carried unspoken fear. This wasn't just a family disagreement, it was psychological warfare. Joy realized something painful. This conflict wasn't meant to be resolved, it was meant to force a choice. And when choices are forced, they are rarely forgiven. The pressure kept mounting. The silence grew colder. Then one day, his mother stopped negotiating. She didn't wait for a heated argument. She didn't explain. The ultimatum came cold, calculated, final. Joy remembers that conversation clearly, not for what was said, but how it was said. There was no anger, no hesitation, only certainty. She gave him a choice: divorce Yara or lose your family. No compromises, no mediation, no second chances. If he stayed with her, from that day forward, he was no longer her son. She would not recognize him as her child. Those words didn't echo, they collapsed. For Joy, it felt like the ground gave way beneath him. This wasn't a disagreement anymore. It was emotional exile, a declaration that love was conditional. He tried to reason with her. He reminded her of their years together, their sacrifices, and the bond built long before cameras and contracts existed. He pleaded for time, dialogue, and space to heal. But she refused. In her mind, this wasn't cruelty, it was protection. She believed she was saving her son from a mistake, even if it destroyed their relationship. Joy hung up and sat in silence. He didn't cry right away, because when a parent withdraws love, it doesn't feel like anger, it feels like erasure. Yara watched him break in ways she had never seen before. This wasn't frustration or stress, it was grief. He told her everything: the threats, the conditions, the choice he was forced to make. Yara didn't celebrate his loyalty. She didn't demand anything. She felt guilt, heavy and suffocating, for being the reason a son had to choose. She offered to step back, to create distance, to sacrifice herself for his peace. But Joy understood something in that moment. If he gave in, he would lose more than his wife. He would lose himself. So he made a decision quietly, firmly, without drama. He chose his marriage. And in doing so, he accepted a truth that hurt more than the ultimatum itself. Some families don't survive boundaries. Some love only exists when obedience does. That realization didn't free him, it broke him. And it would soon lead to a choice so drastic, so final. After the ultimatum, nothing exploded. Instead, everything went quiet. And that silence was suffocating. Joy didn't receive angry messages or public condemnations. There were no dramatic confrontations, just absence. Calls stopped. Messages went unanswered. Holidays passed without invitations. It was as if he had vanished from their lives overnight. That kind of silence does something to a person. It forces you to question your worth, not just as a son, but as a human. Yara felt it too. Friends became cautious. Conversations shifted. Even casual interactions carried tension, as though people feared saying the wrong thing. Rumors circulated quietly, loud enough to be felt. Yara became hyper-aware, avoided unnecessary contact, and focused on her child, her home, and protecting the little peace that remained. But peace was fragile. Joy carried guilt like a second skin. Even though he stood by his decision, the emotional cost was relentless. He mourned a fractured relationship, the life he thought he was supposed to have, the family barbecues, shared milestones, and unconditional support. All gone. And yet the pressure didn't stop. Indirect messages came through relatives, old friends, and distant connections. Each carried the same message in different words: this didn't have to happen. You can still fix this. Fix this meant one thing: leave Yara. The realization was devastating. This wasn't about reconciliation. It was about submission. The stress affected every aspect of their lives. Sleep suffered. Conversations became cautious. Joy and Yara weren't fighting each other. They were fighting the weight of the world pressing in from the outside. Even the public noticed. Fans saw fewer posts, less interaction, no family appearances. Speculation grew, but the truth remained buried. Behind closed doors, Joy and Yara had long, painful conversations about the future, not just emotionally, but practically. Where could they live without constant pressure? How could they raise their child in peace? What kind of life did they want outside the spotlight? One thing became painfully clear. Staying meant constant war. Leaving meant survival. Joy and Yara spent weeks talking, planning, and trying to imagine a life where they could breathe. Every conversation was weighed down by the past, by the ultimatum, by the silent pressure of a family who had already written them off. They knew the choice wasn't just about geography or finances. It was about survival. And survival meant leaving everything they had built behind. Selling their home, their possessions, their American dream wasn't easy. Every item carried memories, a connection to the life they had fought so hard to create. The furniture, the photos, the little things that made a house a home, they had to let it go. But letting go physically was easier than letting go emotionally. Each signed document, each box packed, reminded them of the family they had loved and lost, and the life they were leaving behind. Even as the money transferred and the papers were signed, the questions lingered. Would leaving fix anything? Or just create more scars? Would their families understand one day? Could they ever go back? There were no guarantees. But staying had become a trap. Every visit, every call, every holiday reminder was a dagger. They had already felt the weight of judgment, the subtle whispers, the cold absence. Leaving was the only way to protect themselves, their marriage, and most importantly, their child. Packing wasn't just physical labor, it was emotional labor. Yara watched Joy carefully wrap mementos, knowing he was saying goodbye not only to possessions, but to parts of himself tied to his family. Joy tried to be practical, but there were moments when his composure cracked. A photograph, a childhood trophy, a note from a parent. It was all evidence of a life that could no longer exist in the same way. Yara held him, whispered reminders that this was survival, not surrender. But survival didn't feel clean or simple. It felt like grief, heavy and relentless. Their departure was quiet, almost invisible. No dramatic announcements, no farewell parties, no media spectacle. For them, the world didn't need to see the choice. They only needed to make it. They left behind not just a home, but a culture, a community, and a system of support that had once been the center of their lives. The plane that carried them away was more than transportation. It was a vessel out of judgment, out of control, and toward an uncertain future that was, paradoxically, free. Even after leaving, the impact of the ultimatum lingered. Joy didn't just feel the absence of his family, he felt the weight of lost trust, lost acceptance, and the knowledge that some love is conditional. Yara carried guilt, not for her actions, but for the way her presence had been used as a wedge between a son and his parents. They were together, but the emotional landscape was fractured. Every phone call, every unexpected text, every social media post carried tension, caution, and the unspoken weight of past conflicts. Raising their child in this new environment brought new challenges, but also a strange form of relief. For the first time in months, they could set boundaries without immediate interference. They could teach their child lessons about respect, independence, and love without judgment lurking in the corners. Every laugh, every bedtime story, every small victory in parenting felt like a reclamation of the life they wanted to live. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The emotional toll, however, was relentless. Joy found himself replaying conversations in his mind, analyzing his mother's words, her tone, and the choices he had made. Sleep remained restless. Memories of family dinners, birthdays, and holidays haunted him. Even when physically removed, the psychological weight followed him. He realized that some losses are not physical. They live in memory, in expectation, in what could have been. Yara, too, struggled. She had sacrificed not only her comfort, but the possibility of being accepted into a family she had hoped to join. Friends noticed the change. Her once outgoing nature now measured, cautious. Conversations became strategic, as if she was navigating a minefield where every word could be misinterpreted. She focused on protecting her child, creating a safe environment where love wasn't conditional, and teaching them the lessons her husband had learned the hard way. That boundaries are essential, and loyalty sometimes means standing against those closest to you. Even in isolation, pressure found them. Distant relatives, old friends, and acquaintances sent indirect messages, reminders that the family drama hadn't ended in the eyes of others. Each message, wrapped in concern or advice, carried the unspoken